Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's webinar. Brilliant to have you all back with us today, level 5, day 1 and all that. But I hope you're all keeping safe and well, and we can begin to see you all kind of coming in and onto today's webinar. So that's brilliant. As usual, as you're joining us, if you can hear me, if you can see our holding slide, you might just pop on the chat and let us know that that's all working for you. But yeah, as I said, we're delighted to welcome you back to kind of the next installment in our Trust Insight series. So this morning, we're going to be looking at how we can understand and build high performance teams. My name is Féine Stoney and I'll be your host for this morning. So any questions you can pop in the chat and I'll be able to get those to our panelists throughout today's session. I'm joined by my colleague Jim Flynn, who's going to be running the session today, and we're joined by our latest expert panels. We have Annamarie O'Connor of Tayto Snacks and Kathryn White of the Office of Government Procurement. Jim's going to be doing the formal introductions in a little bit. So just a short amount of housekeeping before we get going. The session will last an hour. We should be wrapped up and have you ready for your next 11 a.m. Zoom meeting towards the end of this. The recording will be available to everybody, and we're looking at I think it's November 12th for our next webinar. So just keep an eye out for the invite on that coming out soon in the next couple of weeks. That's brilliant. Morning, Stephen. Morning, Septa. Hi, Anthony. Hi, Marina. Brilliant. You can all hear us. We're ready to go. So without further ado, I am going to pass over to Jim Flynn. So Jim, over to you.
Thanks very much, Féine, and thanks very much to the rest of the Great Place to Work team. Really excited to have you all here with us today, as we have two expert panelists, which we're looking forward to getting into discussing their progress over the past 12 months. First of all, thanks very much to Kathryn and Annamarie for taking the time to, I suppose, to gather their thoughts in relation to this and to come onto the webinar this morning, and also to offer to share and with the community some of their insights and some of their thoughts. One of the things that in terms of discussing this webinar is there's a lot of material that we're going to touch on today, which hopefully will spark your interest. And according to the pieces that you are interested in, please contact us, contact Kathryn or Annamarie after the discussion to get some deeper insights on it. So we're going to be going at a pace today, and I apologize for that in advance. But just to say, we want to make the best use of your time. We did think about separating this into longer webinars and possibly one each in order to do the work that's gone into all of this by both HR teams and both HR leaders justice. And I'm concerned that we mightn't quite do that. But what we will do is hopefully make the best use of your time, give you a taster of what's there and some really great insights from some quite different organizations. So from the point of view of Tayto Snacks, a very recognized brand in manufacturing, distribution, fast-moving consumer goods. And then on the other hand, we've got a probably less well-known public sector organization who has huge impact in terms of how Ireland is governed and gets value for money in a sustainable way. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to Kathryn. Kathryn's head of HR at the Office of Government Procurement and is also the leader of the CIPD HR team of the year, which I think both panelists that we have today, one of the things is they're great leaders in terms of what they do, and they're great HR people. So I'm really looking forward to getting into the detail of some of the stuff that they've been working on and the success that they've had over the past 12 months. So Kathryn's background, she's got a master's in HR from DCU. She's a leadership coach from Kingston College. Her background, she worked in JP Morgan, in Chase Manhattan, and then moved into the civil service a number of years ago. I'll hand over to you, I suppose, Kathryn. You've got 3 children who are in the middle of Halloween week, I think it is.
That's right. Yeah, we had the joyful occasion of dyeing hair yesterday, so I managed to get some black hair dye on the walls as well. Don't ask. So I think my talents don't lie in arts and craft and creativity, definitely not. But look, delighted to be here, and thanks to Jim and Fania and all the team at the Great Place to Work for the invitation to talk. And I suppose, look, I'm delighted to talk to you about our Great Place to Work journey to build trust within the organisation. Just move on to the next slide there. In terms of who we are, you've touched on it a little bit, Jim. I promise not to bore, but we're the centralised procurement organisation for the civil and public service, and we're a key part of our purpose is enabling savings, and then that money can then be reinvested in frontline services. Procurement represents 15 billion per annum of public money, so that'll give you an idea of the scale, and 6 billion of that would be spent on the kinds of goods and services the OGP procures for. So we put frameworks in place for the wider public service to spend money. And of the remaining 9 billion spend, we would provide policy advice for that. So things like major construction projects. So just to put the establishment, I suppose, of the organisation into context, we are a civil service organisation. We were set up as part of the reform back in 2014. We 5 offices. Cork, of course, has to have a mention, Jim, there first. Dublin, Limerick, Trim.
No.
Dublin, Limerick, Trim and Sligo. And I suppose it's fair to say we probably wouldn't be the most popular amongst the wider civil service. If you think about it, you're setting up a new centralised service, you're maybe taking procurement out of other organisations. It's not always the most popular thing to do, and that has a knock-on impact on attracting and retaining talented people. So on to the next slide, I'll just show you what our starting point was. So these engagement scores give you a sense of where we were, the low baseline. So we had low involvement, innovation and leadership scores. And from that low baseline, we embarked on an engagement journey in collaboration with people all across those 5 offices that you saw there on the screen, and to hear their voices and really meet their needs. And I suppose that's what our journey with Great Place to Work was, to get that external validation. And I'm delighted to tell you how we did that today. So in terms of why good HR matters, I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but look, there is a reason why we're doing this. We don't just set out to do Great Place to Work for the fun of it. So look, the greatest need, I suppose, the OGP had, we had the expertise and the specialist knowledge, and our greatest need related to the more human parts of work. So we wanted to improve people's sense of belonging, their ability to do their best, allow them to develop themselves, while also delivering obviously for our clients and for the state. And to enable this, we really felt like, look, their psychological safety and trust in the organisation was what needed to be enhanced. And I must say, I'm very proud of the team. You can see the picture there, and they're a really positive, enabling force, driving that change through the organisation. On the next slide, just very briefly, it was very important for people and culture to embody the change that we wanted to see from others. So look, we were set about looking at ourselves and kind of rebranding. We were HR operations and L&D, but it really made sense to rebrand, I suppose, move the view of people away from mere resources. It was down to people and the culture that we worked there. 4 of the team have now undertaken Agile HR certification, and we work in a very kind of collaborative and agile way. It was very visual in the office with the whiteboards, and we had our own little kind of creativity lab where we'd plan out our projects and ask people for input from within the business. Now we're doing that online using Smartsheet, Trello and other new technology. Just to move on there, I suppose, like at the start, we were about getting the best, most specialist procurement people. And I suppose we hired people with a lot of, detail, who will follow the rules, which is great in the procurement sense. But then in the more grey areas of human and interpersonal relations, I suppose that overly logical approach can sometimes, translate into challenges. And you can see there the nice picture of the fire truck. That's a symbol of one of our frameworks. We purchased them on behalf of the state, but it's probably indicative of where we were in HR in the more firefighting space initially at the beginning of this journey. And to meet this challenge, what we did was we used the World Cafe movement. You can buy packs. We didn't buy packs. We just read up on it and used that as a concept. And what it is just going around, instead of doing your more typical focus group, going around, having the place set up, tea and coffee, relaxed chat. People could scribble down. We got paper tablecloths, I think, in deals or something. I don't think we ran a procurement process for them anyway, but just to and I'm recorded again here, guys, it's not good. But look, you know, for people to just signal a change, do something a little bit differently. People could, you know, scribble down ideas in relation to what the culture was like. And it was at that stage that we asked people, look, what do you think of Great Place to Work? So it wasn't like HR were deciding we're doing this program, but we started that conversation initially saying to people, has anyone got experience of this? A lot of people actually did, from private sector organizations and different places, and said, look, we've done it. We think it would be a really good thing to embark on. So it was a really kind of co-creation and kind of you know, collaborative in relation to even whether we would embark on Great Place to Work or not. Just the next visual there was around what should go into a HR strategy. Look, we had a clear idea, but what was really important for us was to create a people strategy, not for us in HR, but one for our colleagues across the organisation. And there's pictures of the team there working with people, you know, and we had over 92% of our people input into that Empower People strategy, which was really important. The next screen there just shows you what the engagement journey was, and we used a local artist, Emer McNally, who captured the elements of engagement for us, and it included taking client feedback into account. And I suppose the really critical part of the engagement was we had an engagement forum. So this is a group of colleagues across all our locations, and they're just wonderful partners at really making sure that engagement is on track, you know, whether people are getting a voice, are we listening to what they say? So I really can't stress how important that was. And then I suppose for anyone listening in that maybe is in a unionised environment, you know, that consultation with the civil service unions was really important to have positive engagement. And for us, that took place against the backdrop of an ongoing pay issue that we have. So to be able to have that constructive conversations and bring unions with us was really, really important. So this was all like our engagement journey. While we were setting up a people strategy, it was almost irrelevant what we were doing. The whole point was to have the engagement sessions and bring people with us. But I suppose where our people strategy was really important is it set out our intent for the next 3 years within the OGP in relation to people. We were delighted to have Minister of State Patrick O'Donovan there to launch our people strategy in March 2019. That was in his Limerick constituency, and we had our people from Limerick and Cork present. And again, we did this in a different way. We used a free space, the City Art Gallery in the People's Park in Limerick City, as our venue. And the fact that it was launched with a backdrop of fabulous paintings and not in Dublin HQ, but rather in Munster, was really well received. I'd get extra brownie points if it was in Cork, but Jim, we got everyone from Cork up to Limerick. So
there's always the opportunity to upgrade. Yeah, the next time.
Well, the clue is in the minister's constituency, but anyway, I'll say no more. On the next slide, you'll see how we got our senior leaders to physically sign up to the strategy. And I suppose, why was that important? Well, look, we had said it's all about leadership and trust, and really what we wanted the senior leaders to fully endorse the message and empower, and as well as really sending a strong signal of that kind of buy-in. I've yet to meet a good procurement person who signs a document that they haven't read and understood in detail. So I suppose that was also our handy way of making sure that everyone was really acquainted with our Empower People strategy. So just briefly, what does Empower look like? And I'm not going to go into detail, but these are the different elements. We do have the strategy on our website. We feel it's worked really well for us, and feel free to take a look. And I suppose just in relation to engagement, to give you one example, under engagement, we set out our commitment to undertaking the Great Place to Work process to help us improve engagement. So across 3 years, what would that look like? In terms of making a difference, I suppose at the heart of what we're doing, how we're trying to make our teams motivated, collaborate better and work well together, is really how important the work that our organisation does. And I suppose that's come a lot into the spotlight, you know, in recent times. But in committing to enabling our people to make that difference on behalf of the state, we're also driving accountability and commitment to better outcomes for the state and for, you know, the taxpayers in terms of money. So again, we use that artist, and really the pictures on that were just all about what kind of frameworks do the OGP put in place. You can see laptops there for school laptops, which we all hope we won't be using again in as much detail back in the home place. You can see the passports there for the electronic readers in the airport, which I think all yearn of using again at some stage in the future. But look, it hopefully gives you some kind of a sense of what are the kind of meaningful work that we do in the organization. So at the beginning, then we were at that place where people didn't feel that connected to the organization. And what we wanted to do was use our conference in 2019 just as, I suppose you could say, hijack, or maybe we could positively reframe as proactively using to make sure that our engagement was really up there in terms of what our strategy had set out. So instead of just doing procurement only, we switched the dial to talking about, engagement. One of our colleagues, not in HR, but it was doing a leadership master's. She actually ran Great Place to Work workshops for us at that conference. So it was all about making sure that it didn't just look like it was people and culture driving that, but she ran sessions using some of the results which she was using for her master's. So it was a really good way of just connecting people in on Great Place to Work is here. These were our results. These are some sessions that we're doing to look further at that. We also had a session on agile leadership. We did coaching. We had ESB came in to talk to us again, with that kind of public sector kind of agency vibe, just to look how do they use coaching to drive that team support. On the next one, just really briefly, again, I've just mentioned engagement, and this was around our people and culture partners working with their colleagues. So that was for 2021. It was like to be recognised as a great place to work by 2021. So at all stages, we said, look, this is a journey, and anyone who's thinking, will we do this or not? And I know at the beginning I was speaking to, I think, Breen and probably, Jim to some extent, and the HR tendency can sometimes be, let's wait a little while, we'll just do a few things and then we can be measured. Whereas I think it took me a little while to actually understand that it's not just a measurement of HR and what you're doing, it's a measurement of what's happening at the team level, what it feels like, what your leaders are doing. So I think for us, we set out, look, this is going to be a journey, and everyone understood that and bought into it and came with us on the journey. The other one there, which I think is particularly relevant in relation to team building and building high performance teams, some of our team are certified on things like DISC, MBTI, just different tools. And that's again about driving value for money. So we're not just, going out to a consultancy if somebody needs help in a team, kind of in terms of how do you relate together. And I think more than ever in the remote world, it's difficult for everyone. As you said at the beginning, look, it's the first day of the next stage. We've been through so many different stages and levels. I think now, it is tough on people. So it's great to have these kind of, this skill where you can actually go in and say, look, you're looking at things differently. One view isn't, better than another or more valid. They're just different. And how do you interact more effectively together? So this is all about, developing. I'm just watching the time. Shout if I'm if I'm going off track, guys, and you need me to hurry up. But look, this is all about developing coaching skills. And I suppose, I've referenced what we're all dealing with in terms of COVID. And I suppose this really highlighted the importance for leaders to connect with teams. And I suppose leaders are called on to do so much more than manage work now, and empathy, emotional intelligence, they're all coming to the fore. And really what we wanted to do was have these kind of coaching toolkits ranging from coaching qualifications, where one of our leaders could actually, qualify to be a coach in terms of, helping others, to one-to-one coaching. If somebody said, look, I could really use some external perspective to work with right now, and then coaching webinars for the entire organization. In terms of, yes,
if I could ask you a question there for a second.
Of course, yeah.
Your population is used to dealing with some very hard measures and used to managing public finances in a way that gives value for money and is sustainable. And yet you started talking about some nice woolly kind of nice things like emotional intelligence and, motivators and coaching and so on and so forth, which if I'm a really hard-nosed person who's purchasing and who wants to get to the bottom line and get the best value for money. How would you get me on board as a leader of one of those teams?
Yeah, and it's a really good question, Jim. And I suppose, at the beginning when I first joined the organization, I actually thought if somebody says soft skill again, I'll actually scream. So what I started saying was, look, there's nothing soft about something that's going to increase your bottom line, that's going to, drive motivation, that's really going to, make that difference. So the slide that I had earlier around why good HR matters, like what I did was just use an awful lot of data from different sources, just slipping it in there. Wasn't like, hi, you're coming here and I'm going to tell you 10 slides and tell you why this is right, but it's just working it in. Now I'm revealing all my secrets on a recorded webinar, but that's really, I think they probably know at this stage after 3 years, but that's really what it is. It's about using what you do know, in terms of, and I suppose the great place to work is great because it actually gives you that indication before then. You're just thinking, well, I think people are motivated, or I've used this trend, or we've got a survey that maybe is a little bit outdated and we're still working off this. Whereas I think I will mention later in terms of COVID response, I think the fact that we could use a pulse survey and we could really say, this is what our people are thinking now. I think that really showed the value this year. I think some leaders maybe who weren't really sure of the relevance of it, they really were looking to what does the data say, and what picture is it giving us. So I don't know if that kind of captures that your answers your question.
No, that's perfect. Thanks, Kathryn.
Great, no problem. So the next one there was around like our senior leaders engaging in strategy development. And I suppose that was from some, feedback that we gotten from the Great Place to Work. We also did Great Place to Work culture workshops with our senior leaders. And I suppose the quote down below was, Empower really illustrates the opportunity we have to affect change and make a difference for all of us. So that was our own people seeing the value of using the Great Place to Work to kind of drive that engagement journey. On the next slide there, again, like as I've said, it's really important to support our leaders undertaking the change. And one really important way we use to nurture these leadership behaviours was to put in place some online leadership supports. So at the very beginning of this crisis, it was all hands on deck. Leaders were under huge pressure, working really long hours. We had some people where we were trying to, move them to other parts of the public service to help with a national effort. People were doing things differently, like literally overnight. So these online leadership supports were really invaluable to us. So for senior leaders, we used Smart Coach, an EI tool to help leaders grow their EI. And they were really practical ways of just doing half an hour in terms of a certain element of emotional intelligence. And then for everyone from our entry level up to kind of team leader level, we used another one, which is an Irish a startup called Drum, and that's an online kind of coaching platform. So it's the closest you can get to like coaching for all levels within the organization. So it lets people do an individual learning path. They can improve their skills, whether it's collaboration, they can look at, different aspects of their life, and it'll bring them on their own individual plan. And it's really, intuitive. They can use it on their phones, and it's the kind of thing that people can just, plug into. It's bite-sized learning on the go, and that was a real help. And it kind of, it allowed us to say, look, it's not just all on the leaders. Yes, they have a huge part to play, but we do have other supports in place for people, particularly at a time when a lot of people were under pressure within the organization. Just very briefly,
As well, Kathryn, that you are recognised as one of the best L&D organisations, and it is part of your competitive advantage in terms of competing for talent. So your efforts in relation to this have really landed and are really appreciated by the population.
yeah, and I think like we had come out before in civil service employee engagement scores as having high, scores in relation to that. But the team are obviously going through all the data now, and Great Place to Work, and that is really heartening to see that people really value it, and people are saying, look, that's fantastic. I actually feel like people care about me, not just as an employee of the organisation, but as a person and how I can develop. So it was really good to see that data. Just really briefly on the next one, it was around we were facilitating our people in giving back. So we were saying, look, leadership isn't just about within the organization and your teams, it's also around using your skills. So we partnered with Job Care in terms of a community employment scheme, and we did coaching, kind of career coaching for them. We're also doing the Northeast Inner City in terms of work experience, and we're doing the flash mentoring for them as well. And I think that was again something that people had told us in the first Great Place to Work that they really wanted to see more of. So it was really important to listen and build on that.
Okay.
The next one then is just really about recognition. And I suppose that is a key pillar as well that ties in with Great Place to Work, you know, philosophy of thanking people. And this is just a really simple thing that we've done. It's our further education award ceremony to recognize people who've done further education. So a lot of our further education will be concentrated on procurement, but what we've started to try and do is also ensure that anyone who wants to work or who wants to, you know, study something in leadership or coaching or whatever it is facilitated to do this. And I suppose, look, this is a way of doing this in a very kind of inexpensive way that anyone who's listening, I'd really encourage you. You know, we've printed up our own certificates. We got use of the Custom House from colleagues there. And it's just around taking an hour and a half out to thank people for going that extra mile, for doing, you know, further education, for choosing to go and study a bit more rather than just watch a bit of TV or Netflix or whatever the case might be. And the next one then, in terms of COVID-19, I've already kind of touched on this, but we really like literally adapted overnight. So we brought our Empower People strategy online overnight. That's a picture of our CEO there in his hoodie. We never thought we'd see the day, but Paul does a message twice a week, which really, you know, again, that was recognized in Great Place to Work, connects with people. And I think people really appreciated that. We put a huge amount in place in terms of well-being, again, just bite-sized things for really helping people, whether it's parenting, mental health awareness, you know, just really helping and kind of meeting people, I suppose, where they're at. One thing that came out there, the one at the top there, the Great Place to Work, have your say, Connect for OGP, that was something which we set up, which was a mechanism. We could see that a lot of our senior leaders were very plugged in on daily calls in relation to the national effort. We just wanted to make sure that people at all levels in the organisation could come up with good ideas and that they wouldn't be overlooked. So that was just an initiative that we set up between our team, People and Culture, and another team, e-invoicing, and we kind of ran it as an agile project and took ideas in from people and made sure that they were acted on. So communities of practice was a really practical example that we set up out of that. Just the next slide, then I'll just give you a really brief overview. Our participation rates held steady, which were over 80% on both years, which we were delighted. And we increased by 9 points and came within 1 point of certifying as a great place to work. So I think in year one, we said we were a grand place to work, I think. And then the second year, we think we're like a very good place to work. And we're on that journey. But look, we were delighted to see that our score for the overall statement, this is a great place to work, increased there from 47% to 61%. So that's a significant journey. And just lastly then, if I just put some overall perspective, you can see some of the changes which give you a flavour, you know, in terms of engagement score being so low, whereas 90% felt supported with the COVID pulse survey, 56% low autonomy score versus 83% felt trusted to do their job. And that was when we literally went overnight to remote working within 2 weeks. And then the bottom scores there, you know, speak for themselves. So look, it's been a really great journey. And while the results have significantly improved, I think more important, it gives us the framework to have the conversations to enable managers to maybe consider when they can benefit from support, you know, within the team setting. And it's a really collaborative process. So that's it for me. I think of one last slide, which leaves you with some of the lovely pictures of what we procure and what we do in the public service, and happy to take any questions if we're not out of time.
So I mean, I have one question there to kick off, Kathryn, is that, let's say many organizations would say to us, well, we don't have the resources to do something like this, or, you know, this is, especially in the public sector, right, where you're an example of an organization who has to be focused on value for money. how do you know that you're getting value for money across all of these efforts?
So in terms of all the efforts we do, well, I suppose
Absolutely. So you go above and beyond here. You invest heavily in L&D, you invest heavily in engagement, you invest in employer branding. You're cautious about how it is you make those investments, so you consider them well. And what would you say to people in terms of knowing that you're getting value for money across all of this?
Well, obviously, we get value for money up front in terms of our stringent procurement process, which people will be familiar with. But I suppose it's around that evaluation piece and, having measurements in place. So our Empower People strategy, I think there is one somewhere around the kitchen, but I won't wave it at you, but it has very, distinct measures in place for us to look at. Look, what is it that we're doing? How has it met the needs that we've said it'll do? Even in relation to the great place to work. So it's not just we'll embark on the journey and see where it brings us, but we've set out look what we expect it to do year on year throughout the 3-year process. And I suppose we're all the time being measured in terms of that value for money, whether it's, parliamentary questions, whether it's, internal audit. So I suppose we just put a lot, it's our way of doing business. And I suppose we're just used to that level of scrutiny, and we apply it ourselves as well.
Well, thanks very much, Kathryn. That's fantastic. And if you don't mind holding on, if we can take some more questions at the end.
Great, thank you.
Talk to Annamarie. That's just most informative. I'm also very thankful to the rest of your team, Kevin, Grace, and so on, in terms of all the work that they have done. Annamarie, we're coming to yourself next in terms of talking to us about your journey over the past 12 months and your ongoing journey in terms of driving trust and engagement. So, yeah. Annamarie is, I should say, almost proud of, I think the only person I've ever met, the only lady I've ever met who's fully proud of being from Louth.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's a reflection of Cork people, is that we don't meet that many of them, right? And she border, so I think she was hoping that she was born in Meath, but it didn't work out that way. She lives on the Navan Road, and she also has 3 children who are 12, 16, and 18, I think, and who are quite happy, as we all are. And I have to say, for my 2, to have them back in school and in this new level 5, not let's say fully engaged, and it's good for them. So that's one good thing out of today. But Annamarie, over to you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Fania, for the invitation. Thanks very much, Kathryn, for your presentation. I suppose just to give a brief overview of Tayto Snacks and the journey that we're on. And if we go to the next slide, it's really talking about our business. So I'm sure everybody's familiar with Tayto Snacks in terms of what we do, but I suppose what people may not understand are the capacity and the volume of what is produced. So we produce over 8 million bags of product each week, 30,000 tons of potatoes. We use products and potatoes from Meath, Dublin and Louth, which is approximately about 10% of the country's annual crop. So we support local farmers, local communities. It's really important to us. And as you can see from the next slide, I'm sure some of you will recommend some of the products, recognize some of the products, hopefully familiar to everybody on the call. Moving on to us as a business in terms of market leader, we hold 46% of the market, and therefore that puts a lot of pressure in terms of making sure that we keep the demand up, keep the brand image up, making sure that we're doing what we need to in terms of the environment, the quality, etc. So in the business then, our culture is all about making sure that we're doing what we can. People are at the essence of our business. The values that we have, thinking responsibly, acting entrepreneurially and growing together, really run through everything that we do. We make sure that all our colleagues have the right and contribute to the business. And we do that through a number of means, which we will talk about a bit later on. But really, like I said before, we care about the environment, the products that we produce, the quality of the products that we produce, and supporting local community. Like Kathryn, we wouldn't be where we are, I suppose, without the support of our teams, and just a really big call out to the people and culture team at Tayto Snacks, who do an absolutely fantastic job, really in particularly over the last 6 to 9 months, where we've had a lot of different challenges that we'll talk about. But just a quick shout out to them. The support that they give is incredible, and how they actually work with the business to get to where we're going. So then just moving on to our journey and how we got to where we are today. We did a quick infographic here. You can see that Kathryn talked about all the processes and procedures that would have gone into deciding to undertake Great Place to Work. But what I wanted to focus on to the talk today was really just the journey from when we initiated the survey. So we launched a survey in May 2019. We had a high participation rate at that stage. We collected evidence. We held a number of focus sessions, similar to what Kathryn would have mentioned about focus groups, making sure that we got feedback. We had brainstorming sessions to get feedback from the teams at various levels and departmental level about what they felt was right, wrong, what they could change, improve, keep doing within their teams, but also within Tayto Snacks. So we were looking at 2 different levels of what we wanted to achieve there. As a result of that, then I'll talk a little bit about this later on, we agreed action plans for both the team and the organisation, and really put in place, making sure that we were able to bring those themes to life. The 3 themes that I'll talk about today, really from the survey results that we focused on in our strategy, would have been communication, involvement, recognition, and talent management and development. So in these areas, we decided, I suppose, to, rather than look at the wider topics which we have spoken about and worked on, really today just to focus on these 3 key areas. If we go to the next slide, we can talk about how it shaped our agenda. Like Kathryn, and I suppose most HR teams, what we have done at the beginning of every year and throughout the year is look at the strategy, look at what the business is trying to achieve and what the people and culture team can do to support the business in that goal. And what we did was, when we looked at our people strategy last year, was making sure that we built in those themes into what we wanted to do for the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And that included improved communication. I suppose we all can do that, but we put that in place, and that really reaped rewards for us when it came to the great world that we're in today and COVID. Having a robust colleague recognition channel was really important for us. Again, we reap benefits from that, and then continuing to develop our people. Like Kathryn has mentioned in her presentation, asking leaders to have engagement and to try and support their teams without giving them the support and guidance that they needed would have been difficult. And so there's where we started our journey. Just the next slide. So just some indication of how we translated the plans into actions. Obviously, the commitment from the executive and leadership teams are really, really important. If we don't have that, and that isn't present within the organisation, you have a little bit of an upward battle. And so we had the commitment from the teams. We developed project teams in order to look at each of the areas that we mentioned. And there's a little bit of tenacity thrown in there for good luck. It was easy, and it would have been easy for us to take the foot off the pedal when COVID came along. And just to say, we have too many other things, we're under too much pressure, we're trying to keep the wheels rolling, so to speak. But that wouldn't have served us in the long run. So with the long-term view, we kept going. And I put that down to everybody within the business and the drive and the energy that they had to keep that going. We developed action plans, we developed teams that went into the exec and presented the rationale and the actions, both quick wins versus budget constraints. and then they were agreed as to what would be brought to life and how we could do that. And I suppose something that, and we can see that we're two very different organisations, is really considering the culture of your organisation when you're looking to make your plans into actions. What worked in one organisation might not work in your own, and that was something that we really had to look at, because we have three cohorts of colleagues here, and some are on site in production. We have other colleagues in field sales who travel all around the country, and then obviously when COVID hit, we have a lot of our colleagues working remotely. It's just the next slide. And this brings us to our challenges. So in terms of the business challenges that we faced, along with the most of the country, I would say, when COVID arrived, we had to react to changing environments. So we had to react to the changing retail and consumer environment as a result of all the restrictions. Certain retail channels were closed, certain demands for products would have changed. So as you can imagine, if people aren't working in offices or aren't going to work and working remotely, the demand for lunchtime snacks or meals or whatever it may be has been considerably reduced. So we had an impact in terms of what we needed to look at for our pack format. So instead of what we call impulse, which would be the packs that you get in when you go to get your lunch, etc., there was a big movement towards multi-pack and sharing. Obviously, more people staying at home, more people maybe in the evening time having a bit more time to themselves than they would have previously. But all of that meant that impacted on production. So we had to, with our colleagues in operations, look at all the different aspects of how we could meet the demand and how we could change the configuration to meet that demand. And obviously that required an awful lot of agility from our colleagues and also a trust. So we were saying, you know, this is where we believe we have to go, and this is what we want to do, but we need you to help us to do that. So there was a lot of, and I will talk about it in the communication side, a lot of under the radar type of communication that would have taken place with colleagues on the floor, out in field sales, keeping them involved at every turn about what was going on and giving the rationale to why we were doing things. I said to Jim earlier, it's not the sexy side of the communication that we can show with big banners and presentations, but it is hugely important in every aspect of what we had done. And then we had to be
I mean, I've been on site and, you know, been looked at the production a number of times, and it's really impressive. But to be able to be agile enough to switch all that has a really big impact on the entire business.
Absolutely.
And you had to undertake all of that and still have the tenacity to follow through on your action plan. I mean, how did you persuade leaders that your action plan was still important when they're trying to pivot here from packs to different sizes, to people not going on site, to keeping everybody safe, some people working off site, some people not, all of that complexity while saying, yes, we're sticking to our plan?
Yeah, and that's a good question, Jim. I think for a while we had to, we won't say lift the foot up a little bit on the pedal and choose our timing. I mean, there's no way that we could fire ahead on, and I'll come to that now in a second, in terms of, let's say, the leadership development side of things. There was no way that we could go full steam ahead, let's say in March time, when everybody was very nervous, the country didn't know what was happening, people didn't know what was happening with their own families, etc. So it was picking the time, and it was liaising with our leaders and managers as to, okay, well, we're not going to do it now, but we sort of want to do it. So when can we start looking at that again? So it was really that collaborative approach. I know Kathryn mentioned that as well. It was really that collaborative approach as to, look, the benefits of doing this, we all know what the benefits of doing this are, but when is the right time? And yeah, absolutely, timing was hugely important. Yeah. And I suppose just from the communication side, we had a lot of decisions to make about communication, because traditionally we would have used a lot of notice boards, we would have used a lot of paper-based products and communication methods, and that did pose a challenge when we moved into 2020 and the restrictions with COVID. So what we did was moved a number of updates, like Kathryn had said, from the exec. We moved them online to video, to virtual meetings and conferences, our committee meetings, which are hugely important to us in relation to well-being, our CSR agenda, and certain other committees that we had, all took place virtually, so we kept them going. But something that was really important and certainly struck a chord with all our colleagues was we shared the good news stories. At a time during, I suppose, the second quarter of 2020, when it really was doom and gloom and little to look forward to, we shared all the good news stories that we had back with colleagues. So we got thank you letters from clients and customers. We got postcards from families thanking us, but also just in production from field sales, we actually asked them to send us photos about how they were getting on, and we shared that with the whole organisation, which was really, really important during that time. We also have a system, Jim, and this is linking back into how, I suppose, we responded to those challenges from the business. In our operations area, we operate an integrated work system and process, and it's like a Sigma type of excellence program, and in that there are a lot of meetings. There's an SDDS meeting where the leaders of the operations team would meet, and there's a dissemination of meetings as a result of that. It's also very structured. There's a lot of coaching involved, a lot of instant feedback, etc. So that certainly helped with the process that we were trying to change within the business, that the basic processes were still there. And obviously there was increased communication from leaders and managers, and then support from the people and culture team, as you would imagine. Just the next, moving on. And this is just some, as I said, we can't get to the sexy stuff of posters and communication that way without actually all the conversations taking place on the floor and on the field and between managers and those working remotely. As you can imagine, we had colleagues coming on site who may have been nervous, particularly in March, when they didn't know what was facing them. Nobody knew what the virus was. Nobody really knew that much about how it was transmitted, etc. And for us, really, it was that trust aspect to making sure that we made everybody feel safe. All the appropriate measures were put in place following HSE guidelines, etc. But it was also the communication side, that if anybody had any queries, any concerns, they were nervous about anything, to come and talk to us. And I have to say that all the managers, both in field sales and operations team, handled that magnificently. And it wasn't without bumps on the road, definitely wasn't without bumps on the road, but we got there. Something that was hugely important to us, if we get into the recognition side, was our colleague recognition program, which is called Tagged, based on our values. And this is a program that launched in 2019 and really has grown from strength to strength. And this is a program that's designed, that is run by colleagues for colleagues. So a colleague can nominate another colleague under one of our core values. There's a committee that's independent from any exec or leadership team. It's all a committee based around the tagged process, and they independently pick a winner. Then we hold it 3 times a year, and we have a big celebration, and everybody's name who was nominated and the winner is put up on our wall, as you can see the images there, for everybody to see. Normally we would have had a big reveal with everybody attending, but we've had to move that virtually, and we've also had to move the voting virtually, which we were a bit worried about because we thought that may impact on the participation rates, but it didn't at all. And in fact, we got some very meaningful nominations through the process. The other recognition program that we had in place in operations is the in the moment recognition program. And this was really important for us, again, encouraging behaviours that we want to exhibit around the business. And this operated a token system. It could be exchanged for product, and colleagues' names are again recognised on the entrance of the wall to the factory. And I think due to the success of this program, we're looking to roll that out throughout the whole organisation come January 2021. Service recognition was also something that came up within the feedback from our survey and when we did the focus groups. And for us, the challenge was around standardising the approach to service recognition and making sure that it was designed with a number of delegates. So we actually had a recognition committee set up by various colleagues from different levels across the organisation and different departments to get their feedback as to what would work. They came, they presented to us, we accepted that, and it was supported by the executive team. So that's due for rollout as well in 2021. In terms of the third theme that we looked at was managing our talent management and development. And so for us, like I said previously, what we wanted to do was help support our leaders and give them the skills that they needed to further develop their own teams and manage the talent that they have within the organisation. We had a number of programs that people would have attended ad hocly over the last number of years, but we really wanted to get a program that was developed to, I suppose, encourage people to behave and our leaders to behave in the way that we wanted from a Tayto Snacks perspective. So it was totally customizable to what we looked at. We called it iLead, and we launched it in February 2020. What a time to launch a program. The plan was that we would hold face-to-face sessions. We hadn't even thought of anything virtual at that stage. We commenced in March. The first session was before any lockdown, and we held that face-to-face. And then we came across a bump in the road. We had 5 modules, 16 of our leaders attended over 2 programs. And we completed it despite COVID. And that comes back, Jim, to what you're saying in terms of what we're trying to achieve. The leaders themselves were so distracted with all the business, I suppose, challenges that they were facing and the pressures that they were under to change things and cope with the difficulties there. So we took that feedback on board and we moved one of the sessions out so that people had time just to have that bit of breathing space, and that made a huge difference to us. So we turned then to virtual, and we had a number of virtual sessions which ran extremely well. Again, we were nervous moving over to the virtual environment, but that worked well for us. As you can see, we were building on the people agenda, we were acting on the feedback and really making sure that we're providing tools for our people to become even better professionals. So just the next slide then.
Annamarie, if I could ask you, so what would be the key things that you would say, look, to an organisation who's really trying to empower teams, what would be the things that you would absolutely focus on and not leave out?
I suppose for us it was it's empowering managers and letting them understand or helping them understand what that means. It's building trust within the team, so gaining feedback not just once a year through the survey, but this is a constant feedback, and really just making sure that they act on any feedback that will be given. I think that's really important. So building the trust aspect is really key. Managers then are able to, I suppose, explain, develop and coach people if there's a trust there. I think if the trust isn't there and the communication isn't there, I think you have an upper battle. Sorry, Jim, I can't hear.
Jim, you've muted yourself. I feel that's the line of 2020, but you're on mute.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm just saying it didn't all work smoothly for you. There were some bumps along the road, Annamarie.
There absolutely were bumps along the road. We had, as I said, we had a people agenda. We were trying to keep on track with that, but we did have to change it. We did have to listen to what people were saying to us. And I think that is the important thing, is that we can't railroad people into doing things. We have to be mindful of the business, we have to be mindful of the environment, and we have to be mindful of the pressures that our colleagues are under and take that on board. Building trust, like I said, was really important for us. We were asking colleagues to come on site in a situation that they weren't sure about, and we're glad to say that obviously they had enough trust in us as leaders and managers that everything was in place to keep them safe while they were here. The agility that was needed, we needed to change our plans along the way, and that goes with any great plan. And we also changed the mode in which we decided to do things. So as I said, in terms of training, we went from face-to-face to virtual. That was something that hadn't been done before. We had never run virtual training programs at all. There was a nervousness whether it would work, and we had spent so much time and effort to design the program for our leaders to get the most out of it. So certainly there was some challenges there. We had to be inventive, you know, in terms of keeping morale up, in terms of keeping the three cohorts of colleagues that we have feel connected to the business, and making sure that they understand, you know, what the pressures are, and we understand the pressures they're under as well. Paper versus virtual.
Of all of that work, Annamarie, like, you know, how do you know that it worked?
Sorry, Jim, I didn't
how do you
hear
know
that.
that your efforts worked? How do you know that they were impactful?
The results, yeah. I mean,
and your focus in terms of agility, sticking with your plan but altering the plan accordingly, all of that. How do you? We've got some slides here to look at the impact of all of that. So
yeah,
if you could talk us through that.
I suppose for us, well, we hoped it worked. We thought we were doing everything right, but the real test was when it came to the survey. So the results for us in terms of, I just split them out in the communication, you can see management is approachable, our percentage is of 15%, management keeps me informed of 10%, my line manager gives me regular feedback on performance of 12%. So these were key ones for us that meant that the managers were communicating, that the message was getting to people, and that they really understood what was expected of them as well. In the recognition side, then management shows an interest in me as a person, and this is really key for us. We work in an environment where everybody tends to know everybody, and it's important that we keep that going, and that again increased during this time. But I suppose one really important one for us is that management shows appreciation for the work that we're doing. That went up 18%. So, you know, there was an increase across the board in terms of the recognition side, also with the talent management and development. Management hires people to fit in well, and offer training and development were all up by 6 and 7%. But what I really want to stress is that we're at the beginning of this journey. We still have a lot of work to do, particularly under our talent management and development and communication teams. It's by no means a done deal. It's a work in progress. So we can't rest on our laurels. We have to keep up with the challenges. I suppose for us, the biggest thing as a business for us was that the results that came back in were all in this together, and was up 16%, and the organisation will act on the results of the survey was up by 19%. So for us, they're really, really key metrics that people feel as if they're being listened to. They trust us that we're going to act on the survey, and also during the year that we had, that we all feel that we're one part of one team. Again, on the hard metric side, our attrition rate is almost half compared to 2019.
Fantastic, and congratulations, Annamarie, in terms of your achievement of being recognised as a great place to work. We're
thank you so much, Jim. Thank you.
To recognise you. Well done.
Thank you.
And I know you've enjoyed celebrating. We're delighted to be able to recognise all that hard work and to see the impact of it and so on. So it's been a pleasure to work with you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you.
I'd have to say to both Kathryn and to Annamarie, one of the things that they've made clear to us is, for anybody who's listening or anybody who's onto the recording, they're very happy to engage with the wider Great Place to Work community, to have those conversations and to continue that piece of learning together, which we're all sort of very keen on, and have been exceptionally forthcoming in terms of willingness to be honest and to share their learnings and to share all of their hard work. I have to say we're incredibly grateful, and I'm also grateful to the Great Place to Work team in terms of the effort. I also like to congratulate a few other organisations. who quite recently have been certified as great places to work in the past couple of weeks. Annamarie, just one closing question for you, if I could. How did you feel about being recognized as a great place to work while all of this is going on? I mean,
I think that it was, yeah, it meant even probably more to us, Jim, than it would have, just from the results, even the year that we've had, and the challenges that we've had to overcome that. It was just brilliant for everybody within the organisation. It was a real buzz when we got the announcement and when we put the announcement out, from everybody. So a real buzz. We sent out a pack to everybody. There was great feedback and a real sense of unity that we've all achieved it together. So yeah, it was really excellent, really great.
A huge congratulations to both HR teams, and a huge thanks to Kathryn and Annamarie for all of your hard work and your effort and your willingness to share. We're very grateful. And thanks, Fania, and the rest, Marina, and the rest of the Great Place to Work team as well from myself.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Jim. Thanks, Kathryn.
Thanks,
Annamarie.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
One comment that's come in, just I think it's worth sharing, like there's so much gratitude coming in both for how candid you've been and kind of the clear clarity you've brought to your presentations. But one person has mentioned that it's very unfair that Tayto get Mr. Tayto on their people and culture team, and they feel it's a very unfair advantage in the whole thing. But look, this is the way it goes, right? So thank you all the persons for being here today. Thank you very much to our panel. Thanks, Jim, and thanks to the Great Place to Work team. And we will see you at the next one. So that's brilliant. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.